This conference will now be recorded.
All right, folks. So good afternoon. Thank you for coming to Human Biology Lab. Today we're going to review the heart anatomy. I'm going to also show you a video where you're not going to hear the volume, but you're going to hear me talking over and speaking to you about what's taking place as far as the images that you'll be looking at on YouTube as I'm showing it to you. Okay. And in regards to the EKG, this is what will be taking the readings as far as the you've all seen, and we talked about this when we were looking at this chapter, as far as looking at the squiggly lines on the image of a medical equipment that's in a room there that a patient is being monitored for, and if you see that there's a straight line, well, we know that that's not good, right? And so we're going to look at that in a moment there. But first, I want to go over some of this anatomy here and just review this with you all. So one of the key issues that I want you to know as far as having studied the heart is that there are four chambers, and there are two sides, and the two sides are really two separate types of pumps. We have a pump on the right side that will be pumping deoxygenated blood to the lungs so that it can become oxygenated. And then we have a pump on the left side, you'll see right in here and here, and this pump will pump oxygenated blood from the lungs to systemic circulation via this aorta. Okay? And so you'll see here on our image that the blue represents the deoxygenated blood, the red represents the oxygenated blood, okay? And so what we're seeing here is that we have these, this is the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava. These are the brachycephalic veins that are bringing deoxygenated blood from the head and neck area. This inferior vena cava taking all the deoxygenated blood from the abdominal pelvic region as well as the lower extremities, and then bringing it to the right side of the heart. So that is the right side of the heart will be receiving, right atrium in particular. So we have two atrium, one on the right side, one on the left side. We have two ventricles, one on the right side, one on the left. So the right atrium will be receiving deoxygenated blood. It will then pass through, right here, this tricuspid valve, okay? And so this is tricuspid. Here we have the mitral, aka the bicuspid valve. So two flaps, three flaps here, okay, for the tricuspid. And that blood will then enter into the right ventricle, where we will then be pushed into this pulmonary trunk, and the deoxygenated blood will pass, now this is an exception, pass through these pulmonary arteries, bringing blood to the lungs. So arteries take blood away from the heart. This is an exception. All throughout the body, arteries carry oxygenated blood, except for the pulmonary arteries are the exception, taking blood away from the heart to the lungs. Okay? Now, oxygenated blood, once they've been oxygenated by the lungs, the blood will enter into these pulmonary veins and return to the left side of the heart, the left atrium. It will then pass through this mitral valve, aka the bicuspid valve, and enter into the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, it enter into, we say here, the ascending aorta, aortic arch, and then the thoracic aorta, and which will eventually in the abdominal region become the abdominal aorta. And these right here, brachiocephalic trunk, this would be also the common carotid artery and the subclavian artery are going to head, neck, and upper in the extremities. This right here and this right here going to the right and left upper extremities. And so this is taking oxygenated blood to systemic circulation. Know that on the right side, the pressure is very low, okay? And we don't have to push very hard to push this blood to the lungs. Whereas on the left side, this is pushing against great pressure of the arteries, and so it's under higher pressure, and it's the highest pressure as far as in the aorta, highest pressure in the vena cava, inferior and superior, the lowest pressure as far as blood pressure is concerned. Okay. Now I'd like to take a moment and show you all an interesting video. I think you'll find that it's pretty cool. And let's see here. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to make it larger. And again, you will not hear the volume as far as the audio of this actual video, but I'm going to talk you through it, okay? And it's got the closed caption on. Actually, I can make it full screen. Let's do the full screen. Okay, so let's go. Let's start with this video. All right, now, so there are components of the electrical components of the heart, okay? The SA node, the AV node, the AV bundle. Here would be the bundle branches, and then the Purkinje fibers, the outer portions of the ventricle, okay? Now, the SA node is considered the pacemaker of the heart. So the electrical activity begins here, and this will help to keep the normal sinus rhythm of the heart. So when you hear and you've heard and you can listen to your own heart and you've heard lub dub, doop 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 doop, that would be as a result of the closing of valves. Okay, the closing of valves, that's as a result of hearing that lub and that dub. Okay, so let's watch here as far as you'll see blood flow through the heart, and then he's going to show you that we have, oh, turn this off. Okay, so you'll see blood flow, and you'll also see the electrical activity, and the EKG will show you exactly what's going on as far as where the electrical activity is taking place in the heart and how it's showing up on that electrocardiogram. Okay, so let's look. So there's the SA node. It's in the right atrium. This is that pacemaker of the heart. So see, here we have, you're going to watch here, and you're going to see how we have blood leaving one area, these chambers, and then entering into other, then blood will enter into the superior chambers. Here's that electrical activity represented in yellow. And you're seeing as blood starts to then leave the atria, both sides, but then there will be a contraction which will force and push more the rest of the blood out of the atria and into the ventricles. And what was mentioned there also is that, so the SA node is the pacemaker of the heart. The AV node allows for a little bit of a pause, a little bit, so that we can actually have to ensure, you see here as far as that all the atria have ejected all the blood into the ventricles. Very important. So let's take a look. Now that electrical activity is traveling, and you see here that it caused for the contraction of the atria, which would push the rest of the blood into the ventricles. Then we have this AV bundle where it's going to then travel down into the ventricles and allow for them to receive this electricity so that they can then contract and push the blood either to the lungs or to the body, to the systemic circulation. So this electrocardiogram, right, ECG, EKG, you've probably heard it more as EKG, right? It just shows you a reading, okay? These recordings of what's the electrical activity, the action potentials that are present within the heart. What I want you to be able to see is that he's going to then show you the heart. There you go, the heart, as well as the reading there, and you're going to see what happens and what's taking place. So you see here with this portion of the EKG, you'll see we have issues in the atria. Okay, so electrical activity in the atria. We will then have contraction taking place right through here. So from here to here, this is what's taking place between the P wave and the P and Q segment. And then this you recognize, this QRS right here would represent then the depolarization and then the contraction that's going to take place of the ventricles and moving the blood to, whether it's to the lungs or to systemic circulation. Pretty interesting. All right, so I'm going to give you this website here now. So I'm going to then come out of exit full screen here. Yeah. All right, so if you'd like to on your own, take a look at this video here. It's Cardiac Conduction System and Understanding ECG. animation. So if you'd like to look that up on your own and review this more than just this time that we have looked at it in the video today, you're more than welcome to do that. Let me minimize that. And then I'm going to come over to the blood cells. And here, what we're looking at, and actually, let me show you this image first. So in this image here, you're seeing that we have in the blood, we have these platelets, these particles, these pieces of what's called a megakaryocyte. That's in the PowerPoint there, and it's this large cell that has these pieces that come off that are involved in clotting of blood. Those are the platelets. And these platelets are not only just pieces of cells, but they're actually pieces of cells that contain a nucleus, okay? So they are nucleated. So these all have nuclei. So you see right here the nucleus, right there, here. This is the nucleus, and the nucleus right here of all of these different types of blood cells, except for the exception would be what? Would be red blood cells. Okay, mature red blood cells do not have a nucleus. They are just sacs of hemoglobin that hold on to oxygen and deliver it and release it and then move away. They'll help with the removal of CO2 from cells and tissue and bring it to the lungs and release and then grab onto more oxygen and then take it to the tissues. So really important that that's the red blood cells, the erythrocytes, no nucleus. But all the other cells, they do have nuclei, okay? Let's take a look at this image here. And actually, you know what I have? I thought that I saved. Where did I save it? There it is. Here we go. Very good. So just giving you a little bit of a basic image here is functions of the blood cells. And you'll see here that we have, so you're not looking at the red blood cells, you're just looking at the white blood cells, you're not looking at the platelets. I said to you that the platelets are for blood clotting, right? So when there's some type of damage to a blood vessel, platelets move to that area and work together with other components of the blood in order to create a clot and help the healing process and stop the bleeding, okay, of any type of damaged vessel. The red blood cells, I said to you that they are moving oxygen throughout the body, releasing it to the cells and tissues, and then they're taking up a little bit of CO2 and also helping with the movement of CO2, primarily as bicarbonate present within the plasma, okay? So they're movement of gases, the red blood cells, very important, the erythrocytes. But here we have the white blood cells. Now the white blood cells, AKA also known as the leukocytes, right? Specific functions, folks, okay? And really your immune system comprised of these white blood cells in addition to other types of proteins and other types of chemicals that are involved in keeping you healthy and well, right? And in particular, the lymphocyte here, this lymphocyte, see how it's got this very large nucleus and only like a moon-shaped cytoplasm that you're viewing here, okay? These cells, lymphocytes, there are T and B lymphocytes. The B lymphocytes will actually help to produce antibodies. They're antibody factories. And so antibodies are very important as far as marking cells for destruction. We're going to be talking more about this next class. Okay? T lymphocytes, very involved in activating the specific immune response. And without helper T cells doing their function, which HIV can attack and destroy and hijack, really our immune system is not going to function as well as it properly could. So the T lymphocytes, they mature in the thymus gland, the B lymphocytes in the bone marrow. And all the blood cells are produced in the red bone marrow. Okay? The neutrophils, they're involved in primarily, it's bacteria, fungal, right? They really are involved in infections and they can phagocytize bacteria, fungi that can possibly make us sick and that we don't have a symbiotic relationship with. They take care of the neutrophils. They're the first responders. They're the largest amount of white blood cells would be the neutrophils. They don't have a long life because if they did, they would really act as far as they could be involved in an autoimmune response. Our body's attacking our own cells, and they're very powerful And so we try to keep they only have a limited lifespan so that they can do their job and then they're done. Okay? Eosinophils, they actually have a red cytoplasm, and the basophil has a very dark purple type cytoplasm. Okay, these two are very distinct in their appearance. Okay, sometimes students, those that are going into nursing, will get the lymphocyte really confused with the basophil because it's really hard to see that the cytoplasm takes up most of the basophil, so it kind of looks like it's the nucleus, but it's really not, because both stain pretty dark as far as, but you can see with the lymphocyte that there is this crescent-shaped moon of a cytoplasm present. So the eosinophils, right? So we're thinking about parasites in particular, okay? So parasites, parasitic infections can make you sick, so eosinophils will increase in number and be able to attack those, okay? Also, as far as when involved in allergic type reactions, eosinophils will be present in larger numbers. The basophils, remember, never let monkeys eat bananas, basophils. They're in the very smallest amounts, low number wise, and it's a good thing too, because what happens is that allergic and antigen response here. So know that the cytoplasm here of this cell will release histamine. When you have an allergic response, right, you have high levels of histamine in your body as a reaction. Now, this causes vasodilation and it helps you handle and deal with the allergic response. But here's the thing, that histamine really brings about a lot of different symptoms and such. So what do you take? Like a Benadryl, which is an antihistamine, right? So basophils will actually increase the inflammatory response. And remember, inflammation is part of your immune response. So it's not a bad thing. It's just a bad thing when it's too much of an inflammatory response and over extended period of time that can make you pretty miserable, and really can then start to act as autoimmune. Your body's attacking your own cells, which is not a good thing. And like I said, next week we'll go into more detail regarding the immune system. So then the monocytes are they're large. These are large type of white blood cell, and this monocytes will actually, after a short period of time, less than a week, they'll leave the blood and they'll differentiate, they'll become what's called a macrophage. And the macrophages, you'll see here, eventually they become tissue macrophages, which remove dead cell debris and attack microorganisms. So they're involved in also cell eating, phagocytosis, okay? And they'll also process and recycle the cells that are old and no longer functioning well, okay? So cells that have lived long enough. So a red blood cell can live up until like 120 days. After that, they're no longer functioning well. So, and at their optimum, their peak. So then macrophages will help to be the cleanup crew and take care of them. Okay. All right, folks, I'm going to stop recording.